All right, good morning, afternoon, evening, YouTubers, whatever time it is when you're listening to this. Let's see, Diamond's log start date 12-2-2014. I want to talk a little bit about a book, and I'm going to introduce that by talking about a trip, very significant trip, and a person. There's a person who's been doing a heck of a lot of work in the area of preparedness nationally, internationally, Marjory Wildcraft. Originally, her DVD was called Backyard Food Production, and now it's Grow Your Own Groceries. You can look up growyourowngroceries.com. She has been just a powerhouse of energy, a dynamo. She's been doing a heck of a lot of things, but one of the things she did in the last year was she jumped through all the hoops, State Department, and she scheduled a trip to go to Cuba. And she did that for a very, very specific reason. I helped found the Well-Fed Neighbor Alliance here in Missouri, Southwest Missouri, and because of that, Galen Chadwick is one that really the driving force, the brains behind it. And if I sound proud, a lot of times I'll just say a little bit of something here. I recently, a few weeks ago, went to a meeting down in Brixey, Missouri, and it was a brainstorming session, a meeting on soil amendments and whatnot. And the ONE, OzArk Neighborly Exchange, One Garden put it on, and Galen was there, a lot of other people. The man was there from New York doing talk on soil amendments, rock phosphates and all different kinds of things, azomite and best things, stuff out of New Mexico, how to remineralize the soil, which I wrote about in my book in the year 2000. Critical. We need to remineralize the earth. I've got in 3 semi-loads of sea salt here locally. I'm going to be working on a 4th here very, very shortly. That's like, 100,000 pounds of salt or better. But whatever, I'm not going to go into that. About 48,000 pounds per load. Anyway, so back to Marjory. She jumped through the hoops to plan a trip and brought it to pass, went to Cuba. And I touched on Well-Fed Neighbor because we watched here as an offshoot of the Well-Fed Neighbor Alliance, which is an offshoot of the worldwide transition town movement. That's how that got started. We need to have, the idea was to have a 20-year plan to get ready for the end of oil. Well, I'm not going to even go into that. Anyway, to be continued there later some other time. So she went into Cuba, and one of the things about Cuba, you can watch a video about it called The Power of Community. And get back to that. I apologize for the scatterbrain in this, tired and trying to do a lot of things. Anyway, local offshoot of that, I developed the transition movement local chapter, whatever you want to call it. We did the Sustainable Cedar County. Sustainable Cedar Como is a Google group. Lady set it up. She picked the name. Friend of mine. And one of the things we watched at one of our meetings was the power of community. And so that's what I'm going to talk about here, and then I'm going to use that as a segue to go into another topic, another book, not another topic, but so let me just do that. And so this I'm going to start reading here something that I wrote, and this was in relation to the Power of Community movie. Okay, and what happened there was the Russian Empire, quote unquote, the Russian Republic. If you remember, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic fell apart. They had an empire, basically. They had evolved into an empire from one nation, and it fell when they went into Afghanistan. As I've said before, Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires. Not that it really hurt Russia. They went from having like 1 vote in the UN to 14 votes in the UN. Broke up into 14 nations. How many of them were communist still, I don't know. But they got, basically they ended up with more votes than they had when they started, 14 times as many votes. One way to look at it. Anyway, back to the movie, Power of Community. Okay, so I sent out an article about Marjorie's trip to Cuba. Somebody wrote back and told me that The Power of Community, that movie was about communists, and that it was about the lie of peak oil. Yeah, okay, we all know that. That's what the thing about peak oil. Yes, that's a scam. We've got more oil in America and more oil in Texas, more oil in Oklahoma, and more oil in North Dakota than, you know, the Arabs do. Why we're paying them for oil, I don't know. And there's all kinds of other energies that we are developing, we will develop. Split water. There's 2,000 gallons of burnable fuel in every single gallon of water you can come up with. How much water do you have? Hydrogen gas, HHO. Done it. It's easy. You know, stick an electrode in one thing of water, stick an electrode in the other, you know, in it, and you got hydrogen and oxygen, and it's a very clean burning fuel. It's dangerous. You got to know what you're doing. You do not need to compress it. Blah blah blah. Wood gas. We could run the entire country on the wood gas. Just the wood amount of wood laying on the ground here in Missouri dead, I think. Anyway, I forgot to tell everyone that. Okay, back to the communist thing and peak oil. I figured everyone already knew that. Sorry. We study Chinese medicine, martial arts from Russia, Korea, Japan, Thailand, without worrying about their religion or their politics. So I did not think vegetable gardening practices in Cuba was too big of a danger to anyone. Yes, Cuba has been communist for quite a few decades now. I think we all know that. And unless people are deaf, dumb, and blind, they know that we are drilling for oil here in the U.S., more oil than OPEC can produce, so the peak oil myth is a totally moot point as well. Whatever. The point of the Power of Community movie, and the reason Marjory went to Cuba and why she made such an expensive effort to get the story from the horse's mouth, is because it is a close historical example to learn how to go from modern civilization to nothing, okay, and how to relearn life, how to make the transition from an oil-based energy system to solar, wind, animal-powered agriculture, economy, etc., without becoming barbarian zombies, okay. They did that. Now, what happened was Russia collapsed. They withdrew all support. The economy went to pot almost overnight, and at the same time, the United States embargoed Cuba. And so they went from having the complete support of a very powerful nation to having no support from that very powerful nation, i.e. Russia, and being embargoed from any imports by the United States. What happened? Did they turn into a barbarian horde? No, they did not. So the point is that it was a possibility, a capability of meeting with people while they're still alive and interviewing them and finding out how they managed to do that. And there's a lot of good, the Power of Community right now is out there. I don't know when or how or if ever Marjory's thing is going to be out there. Maybe it is. I don't know. This webinar stuff and pay for this and pay for that and pay for the other thing and pay for my book and pay for my video. And I'm not faulting her at all, but there's a lot of good grief, these summits on everything. Thyroid Summit and Survival Summit and Preparedness Summit and Food Growing Summit and blah, blah, blah. There's enough information out there on YouTube to be able to handle all that. But my point here is Cuba, okay? Back to that. All right. We may soon see how America faces the same test all across this country, and if we manage to do a quarter as well as Cuba did, we will be doing well. However, I am, in fact, glad the person commented and that I wrote this because it gave me pause to look up a few facts about Cuba. It is almost exactly the same size as the OzArk Plateau and the same ability to grow lots of food. And perhaps it could be said it has a similar high concentration of, in other words, a monoculture, the demographics of Cuba. You have the same race of people. They're fairly like-minded, same religion or whatever, you know, political belief you want to, religio-political belief system, as much as the Ozarks. In other words, homogenous in the sense of similar culture, giving them the ability to work well together. This is a key factor. You have to have enough people together in the same region in order to maintain some semblance of civilization, and that takes a lot of people. I will say again, this is where survivalists have got it all wrong, ass backwards and upside down. I don't care who or what you want to talk to, who wants, you know, I would love to talk to some people about that. Develop some kind of a sensible, logical, reasonable discussion. What do you call it? Dialogue, you know. Those factors will be key survival aspects of any quote-unquote survival community or survival region, whether a few families, a town, a county, or a bioregion such as the Ozarks. Okay, and the Ozarks are full of people who are settled here in a mountainous region because they like to be free. They like to be left alone. They came from the hills of Kentucky and Tennessee, and before that they came from the hills of the eastern the Appalachians, Smoky Mountains, and they lived there because they wanted to be left alone. They did not like tyranny. They didn't like taxes. We went to war. This country was founded as a result of a war because of 3% taxes. Now we're pushing 50, whatever. We're probably, well, 90% really, when you count the taxes on everything. I'm not going to go into that, liquor and roads and on and on and on, and the state taxes, and you can't get buried without taxes, and and they have some of the politicians. I don't know, one of the that nutcase from California. Well, we want them at 90% taxes. That's where we really want them, and that's pretty much where we're at. You be honest. You pay to smoke, you pay to drink, you pay to go to a movie, you pay to drive on the road, you pay for this, you pay for that, you pay to die. So, so you have a like-mindedness. Before the people came, where the Scots-Irish came from to get to America and to defend the frontiers of America was the mountains and the places in Ireland and Scotland, Scots-Irish. That's pretty much the people that made up the Ozarks, and that mindset's still here. So, okay, I want to lead into this. I have another book to recommend that you all read. You can read it free online. The entire thing is there, and the link will be below. I put it in my Diamonds Time number 7, and that is 1632 Ring of Fire by Eric Flint. And what I'm going to get at here is that this book, in a nutshell, in a kind of a microcosm, a hologram, holographic presentation of what I see happening. And I've seen a lot of these. Ring of Fire, number 1. A lot of things in, and not this really a crystallization, but a really good statement embodied in a lot of the writing in the book by John Ringo, The Last Centurion. I'll go into that in another reading. So the 1632, it eloquently explains and presents in literature, in history, in philosophy, in demographics, in geography, every way that you can speak of, all of that presented through a fictional, real-life, quote-unquote, setting of a once and future history. You can download it, read it free on Kindle. You can download it from their website, Baen Books, B-A-E-N, Books, ebooks, B-A-E-N, ebooks.com. Bam. 1632, Eric Flint. Oh my gosh, name wrong, sorry. Sorry, Eric. It's got a whole world developed around it. You've got fanfics, writing on it, a lot of different writers. So you can download it right now. You can read it online right now without even downloading it. You can download the whole thing right now, not just the first chapters. To get you so deeply hooked you have to buy it. It's free, okay? I want everyone to read it for the simple reason that it says the same thing I'm telling you all. The survivalist mentality, us four, no more, etc., will kill everybody. We need to plan on, like Mark Kernke, a.k.a. Mark from Michigan, said back in the 90s, and I heard him speak in Denver, and I saw some amazing things there when he was there. He said, man, if I dropped the flag, if I dropped the torch, somebody pick it up, and man, they were in Walsenburg, Colorado. I saw more Vietnam vets there than I've ever seen in my entire life, ever will see, and probably anybody will ever see at one time in one gathering. Wow, awesome meeting. Rode down there with him and whatnot. We'll hit the ground running, and we will leave no one behind. This isn't us four no more. It's not shoot first, ask questions later. You're going to be shooting people that were sent there by God to help you, and you're going to die because you shot them, and you're going to die because you committed murder. Die spiritually, if not physically. You might survive. You might be a survivalist, but you're not a survivor. You will be dead spiritually, and after the first one, they're all free. And once your conscience is seared from the innocent blood that you shed, the angel that you shot that was sent there to heal you, because you're going to get shot. God knew you're going to get shot 2 days later, and they were there with the medical capability to patch you up, or the herbs to know how to fix you up from that disease or that infection that you got, help you from a snake bite or whatever. It's just insanely stupid, the mentality that has infected most of the preparedness population of this country. So please read this story about a community starting with under 30 square miles smack in the middle of Germany, right in the middle of a horrific decade-long war. As it takes in German refugees, collects food, manufactures, schools, plans, and fights its way to extend the principles of freedom as far and wide as possible. Now I'm going to go to the, oh man, where is it? Yeah, the website. I'm going to read a little blurb here. The ultimate Y2K glitch. 1632. In the year 1632 in northern Germany, a reasonable person might conclude that things couldn't get much worse. There was no food. Disease was rampant. For over a decade, a religious war had ravaged the land and the people. Catholic and Protestant armies marched and countermarched across the northern plains, laying waste to cities and slaughtering everywhere. Okay. Back on that. Okay. In many rural areas, population plummeted toward zero. Only the aristocrats remained relatively unscathed. For the peasants, death was a mercy. Things were going okay in Grantville, West Virginia. The mines are working. The buck is plentiful. The buck are plentiful. It was deer season. And everybody's attending the wedding of Mike Stern's sister, including the entire membership of the local chapter of the United Mine Workers of America, UMWA, which Mike leads. And they are having a good time. Then, everything changed. When the dust settles, Mike leads a small group of armed miners to find out what's going on. Out past the edge of town, Grantville's asphalt road is cut as with a sword. On the other side is a scene out of hell. A man nailed to a farmhouse door, his wife and daughter lying screaming in muck at the center of a ring of attentive men in steel vests. Faced with this, Mike and his friends don't have to ask who to shoot. At that moment, freedom and justice, American style, are introduced into the middle of the 30 Years' War. Okay, that's a little introductory blurb. So, that's the scenario. What happens is a 6-mile diameter sphere, not circle, very interesting from my perspective. I started talking about my AO, area of operation, and a couple years later went, whoa, sphere of operation. We're talking a sphere down into the ground, up into the air. I mean, sorry, you can say I'm crazy. It's all right. We'll leave that. When the smoke clears and the dust settles, we'll see. So that's what I see is going to happen. Is happening. It has already happened in the true perspective of things. We need to look at things from outside of time and space, from a non, anyway, outside of time and space is the best way I can put it, and that's what I'm looking at. So I'm going to go back to what I wrote. We'll hit the ground running. We'll leave no one behind. So what do? Faced with a scenario like that? Okay, 6-mile diameter. I'm talking a 240-mile diameter circle. Oddly, that was called Ring of Fire because around the it was like cut, burned, seared, sliced right out. A little 6-mile chunk of West Virginia was flip-flopped and thrown back in time and across the globe, and the chunk of Germany, same, it was 2 little pieces of spheres flip-flopped, okay? So what do you do when faced with that kind of situation where all hell has broken loose? All right? So when prisoners are photographed and released with the warning that they have 2 days to get out of American territory, and if ever seen there again, would be immediately killed without a trial, one prisoner asks, well, just how big is this United States you're speaking of? When he looks into the eyes of the American leader, he figures Russia ought to be far enough to run. So, this book is about starting with a 3-mile radius ring, a circle of fire around a safe zone. Circle of fire, I want to touch back on that. Interestingly, after the very first actual solid idea, indicator, symbology, hint that we had, I had an initial one was that everybody I mentioned that we knew in Denver that moved before us, every week somebody was disappearing, call them up. Number's been disconnected, no longer service, and they never told us they were moving, poof, they're gone. We get into Kansas, we're sitting there, and I started hearing, and I'll never know how this happened, but I started hearing so-and-so moved here and so-and-so, and that happened had to be about 50 times. So I was tracking them. I was putting just a dot on a map on a Rand McNally Road Atlas open to the middle of the big Road Atlas map, continental United States, and it became a absolutely perfect circle. So that was my first hint. Now, second really solid hint again was we went to a feast day, Passover, and my son-in-law walked up to the visiting speaker and said, "I'm looking for, confirmation this would be a good area to be." The guy shot right back with, well, Airplane Flight Over the Midwest, Corrie ten Boom, author of In My Father's House, and The Hiding Place. Movie had been made about her. She was on an airplane flight over the Midwest, and she saw had a vision. She was sitting on the window seat. She looked out and she sees a circular area, most of it in Missouri. There is a wall of fire, a ring of fire around it, circle of fire around it. And she saw in other visions, you know, that it was protected 5 ranks deep by angels. And so inside everything was green, lush, cattle grazing, goats, children playing. Outside everything was devastation, chaos, anarchy, pestilence, drought, famine, war, and death. And so wall of fire, circle of fire, the idea there, and many other things like that. George Washington's vision, real or not, I like it, it fits, I don't know. It dovetails with everything else I see happening and going to happen. The inhabitants of the land were driven inland into a wedge-shaped pattern. I've said before, if you see, look at the OzArk Plateau, like if George Washington had been up in the air in a helicopter, an angelic helicopter, from any direction, north, south, east, or west, you would see a wedge. That is what the OzArk Plateau is call it 4 wedges, 2 equilateral triangles, double defense, double distress, double defense. I have now for 13 years seen a 120 mile radius circle or ring of fire around a safe region. Land of Goshen in the midst of Egypt, in the midst of destruction, in the midst of judgment. This is a little bit from the beginning of the book. I'm going to read a part here which lays out the 2 paths which lay before the town of Grantville and which lay before us today here in America. We have 2 paths to choose, the right one and the wrong one. The one that will bring life and the one that will bring death. Okay, so this is from the book. So that's about it, folks. Henry Dreesen was saying. The mayor nodded toward a small group of people sitting in chairs near the podium. You heard what Ed Piazza and his teachers told us. Somehow, nobody knows how, we've been planted somewhere in Germany almost 400 years ago with no way to get back. A man stood up on one of the lower tiers. Are we sure about that, Henry? The getting back part, I mean? Maybe whatever happened could, you know, happen again, the other way. The mayor gave a glance of appeal to one of the teachers sitting next to the principal. Greg Ferrara arose and stepped up to the microphone. The high school's science teacher was a tall, slender man in his mid-30s. His speech patterns, like his stride and mannerisms, were quick and abrupt and self-confident. Greg was shaking his head before he even reached the podium's microphone. I don't think there's the proverbial snowball's chance in hell. He gripped the sides of the podium and leaned forward, giving emphasis to his next words. Whatever happened was almost certainly some kind of natural catastrophe. If you ask me, we're incredibly lucky we survived the experience. Nobody suffered any serious injuries and the property damage was minimal. Greg glanced at the fluorescent lights on the ceiling of the gym. A fleeting smile crossed his face. The power plant's even back online. So we've got all the conveniences of home, for a while at least. The smile vanished. But we're still in the position of a trailer park hit by a tornado. What do you think the chances are of another tornado coming by and setting everything back the way it was? Greg took a deep breath. Personally, I'd have to say the chance is astronomically minute. Let's hope so. Another ring of fire would probably destroy us completely. Circle of fire, ring of fire. Completely different world inside and outside of that ring. The crowd jammed into the gymnasium was silent. Greg took another deep breath and concluded with simple, forceful words. Face it, folks, we're here to stay. Ain't gonna change. A moment later, he had resumed his seat. The mayor took his place back at the microphone. Well, that's about it, people, as far as that goes. What we've got to do now is plan for the future. The town council has been meeting pretty much nonstop for the past 3 days, and we've come up with a proposal we want to put before everybody. He paused for emphasis. Just as a teacher had done. We'll have to vote on it. This is the way this is way beyond the council's authority. So everybody, every registered voter here. The mayor stumbled to a halt. Well, I suppose everybody here, registered or not. The sour look on his face caused laughter to ripple through the gym. For as many years as anyone in Grantville could remember, Henry Dreesen had been admonishing people to register to vote. The mayor plowed on. We need to figure out a proper structure to govern ourselves by. We can't just stick with a mayor and a town council. So what we want to propose is that we elect an emergency committee to draw up a plan, kind of a constitutional convention. The same committee should oversee things in the interim. And we need to elect somebody as the committee's chairman. He or she can make whatever immediate decisions are needed. A motion at the edge of the crowd drew Mike's attention. John Simpson, his sister's new father-in-law, was stepping forward to the microphone. The well-dressed man moved with the same self-confidence with which he had addressed numerous stockholders' meetings. He did not push the mayor aside so much as he forced him to yield the microphone by sheer authoritativeness. I agree with Mayor Dreesen, he said forcefully. We are in an emergency. That calls for emergency management. Another less self-confident man would have cleared his throat before proceeding. Not John Chandler Simpson. I propose myself as the chairman of the emergency committee. I realize that I'm not well known to most of you, but since I'm certain that I am better qualified than anyone here, I'm going to call that good. And